Imagine a city built on water, a labyrinth of canals where gondolas glide instead of cars. A place so beautiful it feels like a dream. This is Venice. But what if I told you that this fairy tale city, this jewel of Italy, is disappearing? That with every passing year, it sinks a little deeper into the very waters that make it so magical. It sounds like a movie plot, but it's happening right now. And the reasons why are more complex and heartbreaking than you could ever imagine. This isn't just a story about a sinking city. It's a story about us, about our planet, and about the choices we make every single day. For centuries, Venice was a powerhouse, a maritime republic that ruled the seas, a hub of art, culture, and trade. Think of Marco Polo setting off for China, or the lavish masquerade balls of the Renaissance. It was built on an impossible foundation, a cluster of 118 small islands in a marshy lagoon. To build their city, early Venetians drove millions of wooden stakes deep into the mud and sand. On top of these pilings, they laid wooden platforms and then built the magnificent palaces and churches we see today. It was an engineering marvel, a testament to human ingenuity and defiance of nature. For 1,000 years, this audacious creation stood strong. But the tide, quite literally, is turning against it. So what changed? Why is this unsinkable city now fighting for its life? The problem is a double-edged sword. First, the city itself is sinking. This process is called subsidence. In the 20th century, to support its industrial growth, Venice started pumping massive amounts of groundwater from deep beneath the lagoon. Imagine a water balloon. When it's full, it's firm. But if you start letting the water out, it sags and deflates. That's essentially what happened to the ground under Venice. The removal of water compacted the soil, and the city began to sink at an alarming rate. They stopped the pumping in the 1970s, which slowed things down, but the damage was done. The city had already dropped, and it continues to sink naturally, about 1 to 2 millimeters every year. That might not sound like much, but when you're in a constant battle with the sea, every millimeter counts. But that's only half the story. As Venice sinks, the sea is rising. This is the second, and now more dangerous, part of the problem. Climate change is warming our planet, causing glaciers and ice sheets to melt at an unprecedented rate. And as a result, sea levels are rising globally. For a low-lying city like Venice, this is a catastrophe in slow motion. The sinking ground and the rising water are closing in like a vice. This leads to what Venetians call acqua alta, or high water. What was once a rare occasional flood that happened a few times a year has now become a constant, menacing presence. Today, St. Mark's Square, the very heart of Venice, floods over 100 times a year. Imagine trying to run a shop when you know that any day salty, corrosive seawater could surge through your door, destroying your merchandise and damaging the ancient building you call your workplace. Imagine living in a ground floor apartment, constantly worried that your home and your memories will be washed away. This isn't a hypothetical fear, it's the daily reality for thousands of Venetians. The salt water doesn't just flood, it seeps into the foundations of the buildings, corroding the bricks and mortar that have stood for centuries. It's like a cancer eating away at the city from below. And if that wasn't enough, there's another man-made problem accelerating the crisis: massive cruise ships. For years, these floating skyscrapers, some towering over the city's historic buildings, have been sailing through the fragile Giudecca Canal. They bring in huge numbers of tourists, which is economically vital, but at a tremendous cost. The powerful waves created by these giants, a phenomenon known as moto andoso, erode the foundations of the buildings along the canals. They churn up the lagoon's sediment, disrupting its delicate ecosystem and contributing to the city's structural decay. It's like having a constant low-grade earthquake shaking the city's fragile bones. While there have been recent moves to ban large ships from the city centre, the damage from decades of this practice is already done. So, the perfect storm: a sinking foundation, rising sea levels, and waves from massive ships. It's a triple threat. So, what's being done? Can Venice be saved? The answer is a resounding, hopeful yes. Italy has embarked on one of the most ambitious and expensive engineering projects in history. The MOS project, MOS, stands for Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico, and it's a system of 78 giant, mobile sea gates positioned at the 3 inlets to the Venetian lagoon. When a dangerously high tide is forecast, compressed air is pumped into these hollow gates, forcing the water out and causing them to rise up from the seabed. They form a temporary barrier, holding back the Adriatic Sea and protecting the city from flooding. After decades of delays, cost overruns, and controversy, MOS was finally activated in 2020, and it has successfully protected the city from several major floods since. It's a breathtaking piece of technology, a modern-day miracle of engineering to save an ancient one. But MOS is not a permanent cure. It's a very expensive, very sophisticated bandit. It addresses the symptom, the flooding, but not the root cause, which is climate change and rising sea levels. As sea levels continue to rise, the gates will have to be raised more and more frequently, and if they are raised too often, they risk turning the lagoon into a stagnant, lifeless swamp, cutting off the natural tidal exchange that keeps it healthy. This would be trading one ecological disaster for another. So, while we celebrate the ingenuity of MOS, we also have to face the bigger picture. The story of Venice is a wake-up call for all of us. It is a stark, stunningly beautiful reminder of what's at stake on a global scale. Venice is on the front line of the climate crisis. But it's not alone. Coastal cities all over the world, from Miami to Mumbai, from New Orleans to Jakarta, are facing a similar threat. What's happening in Venice is a preview of our collective future if we fail to act decisively on climate change. So, what can we do? It can feel overwhelming, like we're just one person against a rising tide. But the story of Venice is also a story of resilience, of a community that has refused to give up for over 1,000 years. It's a story of human ingenuity in the face of impossible odds. We can be part of that story. We can make conscious choices in our own lives to reduce our carbon footprint. We can support policies and leaders who take climate change seriously. We can travel more responsibly, respecting the fragile places we visit. And we can use our voices to raise awareness. We can share this story. Don't let the beauty of Venice become just a memory. Don't let it become a modern-day Atlantis, a fairy tale lost to the sea. Let its struggle be our inspiration. Let its fight for survival ignite our own determination to protect our planet. The future of Venice, and countless other places like it, depends not just on massive sea gates, but on the small collective actions of people like you and me. Let's build a future where our children can still wander the magical streets of Venice, not just read about it in history books. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please share it with someone you know. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about our incredible world and the challenges we face together. Let's keep the conversation going.